Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of LifeCrafting podcast. This is Irina, and today we're going to talk about relationships. That's a really fascinating topic because I observe through the people I work with, but also through my friends and, being an active part of the society, that relationships are a really weird topic to talk about. Not only because it feels like a completely different experiences, examining different age groups or locations, for example, but because the way we live as human beings has changed so drastically the last 10 years, and it feels like every 2 to 3 years, the impact and the consequences of this way of living, the societal pressures, the financial anxiety, etc., they don't only impact us individually and they impact the way we survive, basically. They also impact the way we treat other people, the way we view ourselves, and how that bleeds sometimes into our relationships. Another reason why I find romantic relationships in particular such a fascinating topic is because these sort of relationships in our adult life is the only type of relationship that we can extract so much information about ourselves and about the world. For example, through these relationships, we can observe who we are, what our needs are, what our values are, how we feel as a recipient of certain behaviors, why do we make the choices that we make. And I think that if someone really zooms into this and examines it this way, it leaves so much room for self-improvement. So without further ado, let's start talking about it. Really ask somebody what the romantic relationship would feel like. You have usually two schools of people. You have the people that they believe in the type of love that we see in the advertisements on the TV and on YouTube, where there's a family that, they all eat happily their breakfast in the morning, all together in the kitchen. Nobody's having anxiety, nobody's yelling, nobody's stressed. Everything is so harmonious and nice. And then you also have the other school of people, which is usually the people that say, oh, I've got experience in that, relationships suck. Like people are going to just describe relationships as a hassle, as a waste of time, as a cause of trauma and suffering, and therefore they choose to completely alienate themselves from the remote possibility of actually forming a healthy, functional relationship. This polarity, in my opinion, says a lot about the society that we live in today. Literally, the way people view relationships and the way people function in relationships is very indicative of the values that we have as a society, the things that we have normalized, the expectations that we have, the ways we cope with it, etc. This can become very apparent if you really look through couples of a really older age. For example, think of your grandparents or ask your mom how her own grandparents functioned as a couple and how that impacted their family and the further social circle. And then you're going to see that a different type of society with, let's say, different values, good, bad sometimes, they had shaped a totally different way of interacting, a totally different way of raising kids, a totally different way of behaving in general, and therefore they had shaped the way that people perceive relationships differently. I'm not going to say if it was better back in the days or worse. I believe that we have pros and cons on every area that we examine. For example, back in the days, people didn't want to get a divorce when they were clearly unhappy because they were afraid of societal expectation and criticism. But nowadays, let's say we have transitioned to the polar opposite. Now we have a slight disagreement. We just don't learn to work things out. We just give up, we just leave. So I don't really believe that we can objectively choose an era that was the golden ratio, but I do really believe that we can examine each era differently and conclude on the impact and the importance of that impact in various aspects, be it the mental health of people, how kids are raised, how a society can be of high value, a society being safe, etc., etc. If you think that talking about the past and examining how things used to be is completely pointless and worthless, given that we live in a completely different society, let me tell you that all of us, when we were at school, we certainly had that one teacher that said, history always repeats itself. Of course, when you're a kid and you're at school, you think that they're talking about the history, of politics, the wars, etc., etc. But if you really zoom out a little bit, as an adult that you are now, you will realize that our personal history also tends to repeat itself if we don't learn from it and if we don't utilize those lessons, those observations to make different choices. Usually, when we operate on autopilot and we have very fixed ideas about things. Maybe we have our own self-fulfilling prophecy that takes over and makes us make choices that will mathematically lead to the same exact outcome. If that outcome is good and it's based on a healthy perspective and experience of what the relationship should look like, what are the right values for a person, what love truly is, then that's good. But if what you have normalized is something based on abuse, something based on low values, something based on abandonment, then no bueno, certainly. Now back to the modern era. Have you realized or noticed how many people are single and they report that they feel really lonely, but on the same time they describe dating as a really dreadful experience that is very, very difficult to date nowadays. Everyone is creepy, is weird, is dangerous. Other people, they're staying like forever in a relationship that it doesn't serve them well. It's not healthy, balanced, or harmonious or nice for them. But they think that, okay, what's the point of even breaking up and getting myself out there only to find the next person that is going to have issues, blah, 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 blah. Literally, that makes me think what has gone so wrong in the society? And whenever I ask myself that question, a million of different things pop up, and I realize that this is such a complicated matter. And of course, it's not only the social media or only the fact that we have technology and stuff that led us there. It's really, really a compound effect. It has so many different aspects. And usually, when we're having an experience or we observe something that is not very pleasant, we tend to think of a quick fix. What is the one thing that is responsible for that, and what can I do to just reverse that one thing? That is exactly the first problem that we encounter, which is the mindset problem. Literally 20 or 30 years ago, if you were single and you wanted to find a girlfriend, a boyfriend, you name it, you had to put some sort of an effort for this. For example, let's say that you see somebody that you like. You just don't have the option to completely wait until they add you on Facebook or just like their pictures or anything and hope that they will take the initiative to talk to you while you are at your own home wearing your pajamas and your ripped socks and smelling like a potato because you haven't showered in 3 days. You had to put some effort. So, in that scenario, you pretty much had two options. Option number one, if you're too shy to go straight away and talk to them directly, you would need to put some effort into asking people around if they know that person, what type of a person they are, if they're single or taken, and then work through this information and find a way to approach them and give them reasons why they should pay attention to you and maybe make some space in their day, in their month, so that they get to know you better. Option number two would be to go cold turkey in there and say, "Hi, my name is this. What is your name?" and start chatting. That would also require effort because you wouldn't show up like a hobo. You would obviously try your best to be well dressed, clean, smelling nice, being put together, but you also had to put effort beforehand into cultivating your self confidence, into maybe working with yourself enough or having hobbies so that you can bring something into the conversation and avoid, these awkward silences. But also, you had to put effort into yourself to handle a potential rejection. Every single time a person in that area that was showing up and talking to a human being, of course, they were assessing the risk. There is a big risk that this person is not interested. They don't want to give you the chance to even get closer and show them who you are. And that was okay. It was a calculated risk. It was, I like this person so much and I am interested in that person enough so that I'm comfortable with handling the potential rejection. And therefore, then I would be able to process that rejection and move on. I wouldn't completely die and break down out of it and then completely demonize, let's say, the opposite gender or relationships, etc. Now, if you try to play that scenario in modern era, you will realize that this is not going to happen. Nowadays, 90% of people either are going to download a dating app because the goal is to find someone, to get laid, to just chat, or let's say that you saw somebody in a specific bar that you liked, then best case scenario, you're gonna check the tagged pictures of that bar and hope to see them there. If you see them there, you might add them, follow them, something. If not, you just move on with your life. And that's exactly where we stumble upon the second obstacle, which is the fact that we're so used to everything happening fast, quick, without any discomfort. That is very easy to understand if you think of the groceries or food in general. Like instead of going to the grocery store, which means walking and carrying shit around, now you just can order delivery, or you can even order your own groceries to be delivered at your door at specific times. So you can get the benefit out of it without needing to wait, without needing to get uncomfortable. And that is an overall mindset problem, because the same thing applies to dating. Now, people want to date just so that they can date, or they want to get laid. They don't care who is that person. They don't look for the connection or that initial sparkle that wants them to choose that one particular person. They just want to feel the void, feel the loneliness, get, let's say, validation, etc., etc. So they will get into the dating app, they will find the person that they like, they will swipe. If that person swipes back, that's good. If not, we move on, we are finding the next. The fact that there's zero investment and you feel that everything is replaceable, everything is just mundane, is a problem. There is no single possibility that one human being will be able to keep and maintain a healthy relationship if they haven't trained and developed the skill of actually working for something, of realizing the value of something. When we have a trillion of different options available to us at all times with zero effort, without us having to sacrifice anything, without having us to get uncomfortable, without having us to grow, without having us to solve problems, then how the heck do we expect to be in a relationship and then keeping it viable after years? It will be impossible. In a relationship, there are so many things that can cause disparities and disagreements, from values to habits to goals to everything, pretty much. This is not abnormal. This is normal exactly because we are all different, and this is a toll of being authentic. The problem is when you don't know what to do with that, when this becomes a deal breaker instead of actually sitting down and saying, okay, now maybe we made a mistake. How do I repair that? If you have the mindset that, okay, now something is broken, I just throw it away and I get a new one because it's super cheap and super quick and super fast, why would I even get myself into the position of bothering about repairing? Because repairing would require you to sit down and examine and observe and admit things. It would require you to search for solutions. It would require you to make changes so that you can facilitate those solutions into flourishing. You would need to give space and be patient and invest. And in the meantime, you would have to get a little bit uncomfortable until the whatever thing is repaired so that you can use it again and benefit from it. This mindset reflects on our habits, on our choices, and the overall modern day lifestyle. Think about the food again. It's easier to just order something, although that you know it's crappy, because it's cheaper and it's faster and you don't need to bother about doing the dishes afterwards. Think about the gym. Most people are trying to find the quick fix instead of showing up and being patient and being consistent as long as it takes for you to have the results that you seek for. You just revert to the whatever supplement or routine somebody is going to sell to you because they promise you that you're going to have the results that you want in zero time, zero effort, etc., etc. Literally, if you make a Google search about the margins and the profits these sort of companies have, it is insane. People still fall for it. People buy it. Literally, because even though they know this is a scam 99% of the times, there's no magic pill, there's no quick fix, there's no solution that is going to be completely effortless, still, it's so uncomfortable for them to even admit and accept that truth that they prefer to just buy it and live with the hope. A direct consequence of that is that the more options that we have, the less we respect what we actually get. Because we have the illusion that when I have a lot of options and something is easily replaceable, I don't really need to take care of it because I can always get a new one afterwards. Let's try to think, maybe 50 years ago, you needed a watch. Then you would have to save up for a long time so that you can get yourself a nice quality watch. Of course, when you got that watch, it was so precious because it had costed you so much to acquire it that you wouldn't be reckless around it. For example, you wouldn't go bathing or swimming with your watch. You will always remember to take it off first. You wouldn't slam things or do any sort of activity that might put your watch at risk. Nowadays, instead of doing that, you just can buy a cheap replica of it from Temu for a fraction of the cost, and then you don't care about it, you don't respect it, because you know that even if it breaks, even if it's smudged, whatever, I can just throw it away. I don't even need to get uncomfortable and go repair it. I can just buy a new one and I will have it at home, at my door, no problem, zero discomfort. We keep going on. That mindset is the third obstacle that we have to combat in relationships, which is the lack of respect. And of course, this doesn't stem only from the immediate availability and all these options, that also stems from the societal issues that we have around the family itself. Family values, family bonds, family situations, family expectations, weird parenting techniques, people having unresolved traumas that they are now more aware than they were in the past, but somehow now we have less pressure than we had in the past. And that's really, really dangerous to think about. Try to think that you're living in an old society in a remote area where people are super conservative and stuff. Of course, there's a shit ton of repression and maybe strict parenting techniques in the house, which is not nice. But on the same time, you had the natural checkpoint. If you were, let's say, afraid of your parents, or if you knew that if you did something stupid, then the society would outcast you, you would certainly think twice before you do something bad. Nowadays, when you haven't been taught respect at home and you don't have the right values to mimic from your parents, then you're just going to go out there in the society and do random shit because you have never also been taught about the consequences. Now, when I'm talking about the mental health aspects that we are more aware about, is that we have increasingly more people that they are aware that they have, let's say, trauma that hasn't been resolved, and that also creates a lot of weird coping mechanisms. For example, people pleasing, tolerating things that you shouldn't, etc., etc. The kids nowadays mimic that, and therefore they go out there and they learn that, okay, let's say my mom or my dad has been chickening out to really parent me. Maybe I had to parent my own parents. And therefore, they go out and they develop a personality that they know that they don't really have consequences if they do something bad. Or if, let's say, they grew up in an environment that they had to parent their own parents, they go out there and they look for the next person slash project that needs to be fixed. They have to micromanage everything, they have to control everything. So you see where I'm going to that. There is no fundamental self-respect. Of course, if I am in a relationship and I'm having a conflict with my partner, of course, I might have intrusive thoughts of insulting that person because I'm in the heat of the moment. But there should be something as a safety net that keeps me, prevents me from doing that. And one of those things that make up the safety net is the respect. Both the respect for another person, but also my self-respect. I wouldn't allow myself to go wild and get the situation out of hand in a way that doesn't describe who I am and what my values are. Adding up to the whole factor of how family has affected us to the point that today we are scared of relationships or we're completely dysfunctional in relationships, we are talking about the mimicking. For example, when a child grows up in a household that they see their parents arguing or being abusive or being ignorant, or the one parent has completely abandoned the family and the child, then that child, no matter the amount of talk that the other parent is going to do, talking to them about what they should expect in relationships, what they shouldn't tolerate, like learn from my mistakes and don't do the same thing. Unfortunately, no amount of talk and advice is going to ever be stronger than the power of mimicking, than the power of following an example. The kids don't need advices, the kids need a healthy role model. If you as a person you live by your values, then you also teach me as a child that if I have that value, I should also act by it, and that is gonna affect in a huge way the type of choices that I make for myself. Of course, everyone is gonna make mistakes, everybody's gonna feel hurt, everybody's gonna feel rejected, everyone is gonna be in a situation that it was not good for them. That's how we learn. But when that becomes a pattern, it's really, really worth asking ourselves, where does that come from, really? However, in order to be able to do that, we have to stumble across the next obstacle, which is the lack of accountability. For me or whoever to be able to ask ourselves, why am I doing these choices? What is this teaching me? What should I be doing instead? And why didn't I do it at the first place? Although I could see and I knew XYZ, it requires a tremendous amount of accountability, because when you provide yourself those answers, that comes hand in hand with the fact that you are responsible to do something about it. How does that look like in relationships nowadays? Try to take a look at the people that they repeatedly find themselves in situations that they're not happy with. And if you ask them, why did you get into that situation? Or why didn't that situation work out the way you hoped for? It will always be something else. It will always be the other person was toxic, narcissistic. It would be, we lived in different countries. It would be, that person manipulated me and I didn't see the red flags. Oh, that person was not able to communicate. That person was not willing to change or work through things. Well, if always for everything that happens in your life and has been a product of your own choices, the blame and the responsibility is always towards someone else and never on you, you never realize that there is a patch of the responsibility that concerns you, yourself, and the few things that you can control, which is basically your behavior and your choices, then you will never be able to learn from it. You will never be able to look deeper and see what part of yourself is responsible for these choices. For example, when you are in a relationship and it's highly toxic and you're not having a good time, why are you staying there? Are you staying there because you feel that you're not good enough and you're not gonna be able to find someone else that is gonna love you? Are you staying there because you feel that this is what you deserve? Are you staying there because you are afraid to get into a conflict because maybe you have been taught in your life through various repetitions that whenever I express my emotions, this is not allowed and always leads to a big explosion and a fight? Being able to answer these questions objectively is going to unlock a whole new room of self-improvement, of lessons that can make you a better human being for yourself, but it can also make you a better partner. What I have learned so far in my experience in this lifetime is that people are weird in many ways, good and bad. People are entities that we really need. As a species, the Homo sapiens species, we were never really biologically programmed to just live as loners. We were always living in a herd, in communities. We needed each other in order to not only survive, but to also thrive. There is a reason why our species started from living in caves, and then we developed to a point that we now have art, now we have tools, then we had communities, then we had organized structures, then we had established countries, etc., etc. We had civilization. If we were just thinking back in the days that, okay, I will completely deny myself that we need other human beings around, then we wouldn't have progressed. And that is something that I feel that many people are in denial today. This whole trend that, oh, women are strong, confident, independent, we don't need anyone. Then you have men, oh, don't need women, they're just a distraction, I just have to hustle, hustle, hustle. Then you have other people, oh, life is pointless and meaningless, I don't want to even get into a relationship, I'll just rot at home and cover my needs and external gratification, buy fast food and pornography and whatever provides you with quick and cheap dopamine, like scrolling, for example. If you really consider all of this together, then let's assume that two people somehow, one way or another, they manage to meet each other. Then what? What is the incentive of those two people really committing to each other and investing their time, energy, resources, effort, money, emotions, etc., to really create something together? The answer to that question is a little bit more tricky if you think that commitment is the keyword here. What is happening, generally speaking, to commitment nowadays? Do we really commit to something? We have been taught that now the sky is the limit. Literally, I can start something, if I don't like it, I can try something else, it's okay. Back in the days, this is a part of the societal expectations and pressure that I talked about. You had to think twice or three times before you make drastic changes. And that gave you the luxury to observe how things escalate if I really be patient, if I really try, if I really commit to something, I cannot make drastic decisions and changes before I have exhausted that this thing doesn't work for XYZ reason. That we don't have today. Now, let's say if you study something and you don't give a shit, you don't like it, it's okay, you can go study something else, even online. You don't even need to get out of the comfort of your own home and your own neighborhood. You don't like your work, very well, you can just find something else super quickly, even on the other side of the globe. You can find something remote. So you don't really need to commit to that one job until you finally get a raise, get a promotion, etc., etc. Of course, this comes with a lot of perks. For example, when you're at a working environment that has zero inclusivity about neurodivergency, about sexual orientation, about mental health, of course, it's good that you have now way more options and you don't have to suffer that. But on the same time, as a mindset, you also know that I don't really need to commit to something. I just go in and I have high expectations from the start, and if they're not met instantly, then I can just boom, walk away. So being able to commit in a relationship is tightly connected to that mindset. Most people believe or tend to believe that committing to my partner it's only about the physical sexual loyalty, but it's not that. Committing to a person means that I understand and I recognize my responsibilities in this. I see the mutual goals that we have for that relationship. I take the effort and the time to communicate and try to resolve and try to repair things so that we can actually have a viable chance to get there to the end goal. If for any reasons the circumstances are so shitty and the requirements are not fulfilled, of course, we don't need to keep going on this indefinitely, but at least we need to have a viable chance. And I believe that most people feel that they are torn between committing to that person or commit to their own identity. And what I mean by that is the next obstacle, which is the trauma. When I first started talking online in public about trauma, as well as with the people I work with on the life coaching, a lot of people told me, yeah, but like trauma is something that happened to me and it has completely shaped the way I survived and da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, you are exactly right. Trauma is something that happened to you. It is not you, it is not your identity. If you have literally adopted something that happened to you as who you truly are, of course you operate from that level, of course you reflect that level. And of course, you project that to the people around you. And that's the biggest enemy of healing. No amount of therapy or self help books can help you if you don't realize that trauma is not who you are. It's just something that happened to you. Did it impact you tremendously? Yes. But is it who you are? No. When you make that important distinction, you're able to realize that me working on it and trying to heal from that, try to learn from that, try to be a better person for myself and therefore for the others is not the same thing as losing my identity. If trauma has become your identity, of course, it will feel like this. It will feel like you are betraying a part of yourself. You don't know who you are anymore if you shed that layer off. So you hold on it for dear life and you throw all the resistance in the world. And that is something very hard to tackle, especially if you are a person that you feel familiar with a description that this is you. You have a tendency to create trauma bonding with other people. If somebody perceives their own trauma and their own suffering as their whole identity, then they tend to meet people and be attracted by people that they feel familiar. That might sound a little bit like meeting somebody at a random place and you start talking, and then immediately you feel like you have been knowing each other since forever. Then you start telling them how you have been having issues with your parents, how you have been hurt, how you have been mishandled, and then they start being like, oh, I know exactly how that feels. This is exactly what happened to me. And then boom, that's for you the thing that kickstarts all the sparkle. You feel that you're in love, you feel that everything now is perfect, you feel finally understood for the first time in your life, and you don't realize that you have literally bonded on an attribute that is related to suffering instead of bonding on things that don't belong to the past, but they belong to the present and possibly into the future, such as values, such as goals, such as interests, etc., etc. The reason why this is highly problematic is because when you are in a trauma bonding relationship with someone, that automatically means that either you or your partner, if any of you ever takes any step into healing, they automatically lose that bonding factor that they had with you. How that looks in real life is, let's say you have a couple, they have trauma bonded, and one of them starts going into therapy. When that person goes into therapy, of course, they're going to unlock realizations, they're going to unlock connections that they couldn't see beforehand. And of course, that is going to create a change in the way they think, the way they feel, the way they operate. When the other party sees that, boom, that's automatically unfamiliar, that's strange, that's dangerous, we don't know what to do with it, so we react to this. So it feels like when you have two people that have bonded through trauma, each one acts as a natural checkpoint that doesn't allow the other person to really heal. Because if you heal, then we cannot have that bond anymore. And if there's nothing else into the mix that keeps us together, then no bueno. Another really, really important factor that, in my opinion, is also responsible for this decline of relationships nowadays, and that's why most people don't even want to get into the dating scene at the first place, has to do with the societal roles and expectations. Now, I understand that this is a very, very controversial subject, and I also understand that a lot of people, just by hearing the terms societal roles or gender roles, are going to be immediately triggered and probably not even listen beyond this spot and immediately start a war about feminism and whatever in the comments. But you know what? I vouch for the freedom of speech, and this is my personal opinion and my personal observation, and I'm allowed to have it, so I don't really care about the potential backlash. We can all have our own opinions, and that's okay. So, with that out of the way, what I really see is that although we don't have the traditional gender or societal roles anymore, and I think this is a good thing to some extent, I also see that we don't have gender roles either. And I believe that the extreme side of a spectrum towards both directions is not good. It is not good, for example, if you think of the woman strictly as a mom, that her only value and sole purpose in life is to just bear children and she's only good for cleaning and cooking. But on the same time, I don't believe that the woman nowadays feeling superior and feeling that, okay, we have been repressed by men in the past, so now it's the time to take revenge, is a healthier standard either. What I see is that in most cases, a lot of couples fight, they break up, things don't work out, not because they don't have similar values, but because instead of communicating, they compete. And what I say by compete is that nowadays the average woman is being taught that you should be strong and confident and independent, and we are better than men. We're not even equally good at men, we are better than men. And our sole purpose is to prove to the society and prove to men how capable we are to do the same type of jobs, to have the same amount of money, to do X, Y, Z. And then they say we are able to do all of this, but men cannot really give birth to children, so we are superior. Like, what the heck? How narcissistic is this? Literally, like, it's impossible to be able to do all of this and be mentally sane and do them in a good way. For example, if you're a person that you believe that you can work a full-time corporate job and also have 5 kids and have your house in check, super clean, super nice. You cook from scratch like Nora Smith and everything. And also at the same time, you go and you strength train. And at the same time, you go and you do all the handy work that needs to be done at home. And on the same time, you are the most amazing, affectionate, super duper parent. Like, this is not gonna happen. I don't know a single person that combines career and family and is able to be perfect 100% all the time. It's just not possible because we're not robots, we're humans. Even a machine, even a robot, if you overload it like that for a consistent amount of time, then it's gonna crash. So what's the point to even exhaust yourself and burn out and compete just to prove what? How amazing you are just because you're a woman, or how useless men are. Like, I really, really don't understand this. Women, we were not made to be like this. And that's why all of us, we're deep into psychosomatic symptoms. We have autoimmune diseases, we have anxiety, we have stress, we have issues with our fertility and period, exactly because of that. When you pursue your whole life and you live basically your life acting like a man, trying to compete with a man to prove that you can be better at being a man than an actual man, then you have lost your whole life and you haven't lived, you haven't really covered your own needs, your emotional needs, just because you cared more to prove something to who? To the society, to the keyboard defenders on the internet, to who? On this podcast, I have chosen to be real and to be authentic and unfiltered, so I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I have also operated in that side of the story. I have also been a person that I spent way too many years in a situation that I was trying to live my life like a man because I was told that this is the right thing to do. I grew up in a household that my mom always urged me that I should be independent and I should only rely on myself. Then I grew up listening to a lot of people talking about, oh, men are worthless, they're all the same, they're a complete waste of time, you should focus on your career. Then I had a society around me spamming me with the fact that being at home and cooking and being traditional and stuff is so wrong and it's so demonized. And then I kept looking at people having a lot of issues and not taking any accountability or responsibility to resolve them or do something to get better. So of course I have been there. I know how it feels. I know how this can sound so weird and absurd, but at the same time feel logical to you. And then you have a lot of people that they complain, oh, what happened to men nowadays? Men are so feminine nowadays. That's an actual observation. A lot of men nowadays, they exhibit way more feminine characteristics on their energy compared to the typical masculine traits. And that doesn't have to do with gender orientation or anything. I have a lot of friends that they are gay and they still exhibit a lot of characteristics and attributes from their masculine energy, such as being decisive, being able to lead, being very responsible, being really good problem solvers, etc., etc. So all of us, we are dual beings. We have masculine and feminine energy on the same time. The ratio of it and how that plays out in the different roles that we have to fulfill in the society is what changes, is the different colors that we carry. So we have to always ask before we judge people, and especially men, we as women, what have we really taught them? Like, imagine a man that has traditional masculine values and let's say he wants to be a provider. If he goes to a modern woman and he's like, oh, I'm gonna pay for the dinner, I'm gonna pay for this, most women are going to be reactive to that just so that they don't come across as gold diggers or anything. But by reacting to that and not allowing him to do something that he wants to do voluntarily because he wants to take care of you, you send the message that this behavior and this value is not allowed here. Progressively, that teaches that particular man that you are not allowed to bring the value of provision into the relationship. So that man has to operate against his own value in the relationship. And then he will never ever offer to pay for your dinner ever, just to make sure that the conflict is not going to arise yet. If you really look into this and realize how many things that men willingly wanted to do, for example, let's say a person that is very good at taking initiative. If you are with a person that likes to take initiative, but every single time he does it, you criticize them, you pick on anything, you micromanage everything, then that person is going to feel that I am not good at taking initiatives. Maybe I should stop because every single time I do it, I get a negative feedback. So instead of this being something rewarding, it's something that hurts. So I'm just going to avoid it. And then some time passes by, and then you're wondering about what happened to your man and why your man is so passive and why he's not taking any initiative anymore, etc., etc. So you see that the way we teach men how to behave is the type of man that they're going to be eventually. So if you don't like the way men are nowadays, try to also think what has led to that. I don't want to push accusations or anything by any means to anyone. What I'm saying is that now we have walked to the extreme other side of the spectrum, where instead of having some sort of at least functional roles in the relationship, in the society, between genders, etc., we focus so much into competing behaviors and trying to prove something that nobody really needed to prove at the first place, because men and women, we are equal. We have the same exact value, but we are not the same. Equality and being the same are two so different things. We're both worth the same, but both of us, we are different and we're meant to be different. That's how we survived. When we are authentic and we are our free, real selves, we naturally complement each other. We don't need to compete. For example, if for me, as a woman, that I have a lot of my feminine energy out there in the world, that makes me more nurturing and gives me the ability to be calmer and more soft, I don't need to really compete with a man about this. If I'm better at this, then I'm just going to do everything that requires that energy to have the best results in the relationship. For example, we are having a kid and the kid is in distress. If my man is super duper tired and everything, and he's not able to sit down softly and take care of this, I'm gonna do it. It's not about who is gonna do it and who's gonna do it better. It's about the need that this child has. That child right now needs some comfort. It needs some stability when it's experiencing distress. If I'm able to provide this, I will take care of this. Then, if something gets damaged in the house and I'm not super duper epic with handiwork and my mom is better than that, then I'm just gonna allow him to do it because he's gonna probably do it even more efficiently than I can. That doesn't mean that I am worthless. That doesn't mean that I don't have value anymore. I don't need to compete and do a shitty, botched job just to prove to him that I am also equally worthy. So I think that a lot of people nowadays, they're lost into that frame. And that's very sad to see because naturally, when we are ourselves, we tend to attract the people that see what we are, they like what we are, and they choose us for what we are. Instead of trying to play a persona that in reality, long term, is only repressing and damaging for physical and mental health. These have been some of the factors that, in my opinion, have made relationships so hard today and dating so difficult and have led to a lot of loneliness and isolation in general. Of course, there's a lot more into the mix, but if I elaborated on that, I'm afraid this episode would be probably 2-3 hours long. So I will leave it there. But what I want us to all think about, and this is the main takeaway that I want you to also keep from that, is that it's important to look into the history, like really think the direction that we have been heading on for the last 10 years or so. Where did it lead us? Like, where have we arrived? Are we happy with that? Do we feel nice? Does life feel smooth and easy and harmonious that way? Or do we feel depressed, sad, lonely, with a lot of psychosomatic issues and loneliness? Then, when we are able to examine this, we're able to make informed decisions and make better choices that align with who we are, not with who the society told us that we are. For example, if you're a man and you naturally feel that you want to be traditional, you are a provider, you want to lead, blah, 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 that's amazing. Go find someone who sees these values in you, loves you for who you are, and then allows you to bring your own values into the relationship and live by them. Because naturally, you living by these values is going to complement the needs of the other person, and their values are going to complement your own needs. So everything is going to be harmonious. If now you are a man that provision, let's say, is not one of your core values, and for you, other values are more important, that's also amazing. You should also find someone that loves that about you and they bring complementary and compatible values into the table so that you guys can be free to be your own selves and thrive together. My whole point with this is that I believe that when we detach from what people say and what people think is right or wrong, and we realize that we only have power to make choices for ourselves. If those choices are aligned with who we are, we're going to be happy. If the outcome of this is not great, I don't feel good, it's horrible, then I have to question myself, why did I even make that choice at the first hand? When I'm able to be responsible for my own self, I'm also able to be responsible as a partner too. And when I know who I am and what I need, I also am able to reject people, because knowing ourselves and knowing our values and our goals and our needs and what we want in a relationship is a fundamental pillar of self-awareness, but also our ability to be able to say no is a whole other level of it, because you might be able to know who you are and what you want, and then you clearly see that this is a person that doesn't match very well, but you still go for it. Why are you doing that? Is it because you don't want to be lonely? Is it because you can't have a life on your own that you enjoy so that this person can just come and complement that? Do you feel so miserable with your habits and your social cycle and everything that you just rely on one person coming and transforming your whole life so that you can be happy again? All these are thoughts, all these are questions that I really hope that they will motivate us all to think and be more conscious about how relationships have become the way they have become today. And also in these answers relies the key and the tool and the things that we can do if we really want to build a relationship from scratch and make it amazing, if we want to repair the relationship that we already have that has seen some sad days, or if we really want to be in a relationship at the first place that is incompatible or based on criteria that don't reflect who we are now and, most importantly, who we want to be tomorrow. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for listening if you made it thus far. As always, I'll be very, very glad to read your thoughts in the comment section. And of course, feel free to reach out on social media if you'd like to share your stories, if you'd like to propose any topics for upcoming episodes. And of course, feel free to share this episode with anyone that you feel might get value out of it. Until next time, I really hope you have an amazing day, week, and month, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.